Hello, you're watching Dukescopy TV. Back in the studio for another collaborative interview with Agefi is journalist Nicolette de Joncaire. Today in the studio, she's joined by Edward Karr, president of the American International Club of Geneva.
Edward Karr is with us today. He is the president of the American International Club of Geneva, and he is also the co-chairman of Republican Abroad in Switzerland. But it is as a private citizen, as an American expatriate, that he is here today. Edward, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Nicolette. Thanks so much for having me this afternoon.
FATCA is creating a lot of issues for Americans living abroad. According to the Wall Street Journal, it's creating actually much more problems for the middle-class American than it is for the rich ones. As an American abroad, how do you feel about this topic?
I completely agree with that. I mean, FATCA is a very, in my opinion, dangerous piece of legislation. So FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax and Compliance Act, was passed as part of the HIRE Act. The HIRE Act was originally a massive piece of legislation to stimulate jobs in the United States. And they slipped in, as they always do, this little piece of legislation called FATCA. What is FATCA? Well, FATCA puts the onus on all foreign banks and financial institutions to report on all of their U.S. citizen accounts. So it becomes very onerous for all of the foreign financial institutions. Basically makes foreign banks, broker-dealers, finance companies, hedge funds, mutual funds, all enforcement agents of the U.S. Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. So this is really difficult. The banks have to take on a massive amount of back office and compliance to get their systems in order to comply with FATCA. In addition, there's many more reporting requirements that FATCA will require of an average ordinary citizen. Now, the Wall Street Journal pointed out, and yourself, that this could be much more burdensome on the average American. And the average American expatriate, like myself, we live overseas, so we have to have foreign bank accounts. If the foreign banks, by the way, do not comply with the FATCA requirements, the United States and the IRS is going to automatically put a 30% withholding on all of their U.S. business. So it's very onerous. So as a small American, let's say you're an employee over here and you work for Caterpillar Tractor, Procter & Gamble, Hewlett Packard, any of the multinational companies in Geneva, and you have an average salary, you're going to have several more reporting requirements when FATCA comes in. Specifically Form 8938, which is like a Schedule D of reporting all of your foreign overseas assets in aggregate of $50,000 or more. Now, if you're a very wealthy billionaire or multimillionaire, someone who has substantial net worth, you already have your own army of lawyers, accountants, tax advisors, financial advisors that'll be able to fill out all your FATCA forms fine. If you're just an average citizen who's trying to navigate this very complicated taxation issue in new forms, it's going to take a lot of time. You're probably going to need professional advice, which means that your own costs are going to go up pretty dramatically, and you're just a casualty of this whole situation. You know, I think you're like a casualty of war, because it's almost an economic war the United States is waging to try and get all of their citizens from all over the world to report their foreign holdings. That's fine for the very rich domestic American who is evading tax and has some secret offshore bank account in the Cayman Islands or Bahamas, where most of the American money is, by the way, not in Switzerland. So they probably should be subject to FATCA. But as an American living overseas, as a real expatriate, this is going to make all of our lives much more miserable.
Well, and it's already been observed that U.S. conglomerates in Europe, and particularly in Switzerland, no longer employ Americans. It's too expensive for them. So it's not only hurting their daily life, it's also hurting their job prospects.
Absolutely. And it's a time when unemployment around the world is an issue, even in the United States. We need more high-quality jobs for Americans, and especially overseas. But as you point out, overseas and even American corporations have been hiring less and less Americans. And why is that? We have to think. Well, the United States is one of only 2 countries in the world that have citizen-based taxation. Our other partner is Eritrea. So we're the only industrialized nation that has citizen-based taxation. So we have to report our worldwide income no matter where we are. So you take an American who comes over to work for one of the big American multinationals. They're much more expensive. Because normally expatriates get a benefit package. And as part of that benefit package, they give them a tax equalization. Well, an American working in Switzerland has to pay both Swiss tax and American tax. So it becomes quite complicated to work out all the different forms. Switzerland has no capital gains tax. The United States does. Switzerland has a wealth tax. The United States does not. Where are all these foreign tax credits? How do they go? It's estimated that an American will cost that employer about 30% more per year. So it's pretty expensive when you look at that taxation hit. So if you're a big American multinational company, Procter & Gamble, Hewlett-Packard, Caterpillar, whomever you are, it's cheaper actually to your own bottom line to hire a British, a French, an Italian, a Swiss national than it is to hire the American. So what we're finding more and more is the amount of Americans overseas tend to decline. Americans that are over here, especially in Geneva, tend to be on a 1 or 2 year sort of rotation. Then they send them back to Peoria, to Cincinnati, to wherever it was. And it's very, very few senior management that stay for real long term. You go ask a company like Procter & Gamble in Geneva, they have thousands of employees. They have a couple of hundred American employees, but maximum they're here is 2 years, because after that, their tax liabilities really start to balloon. So they send them out after that 2 year time frame. And when you look and you can go ask any of the multinationals, how many real long-term American expatriate managers do they have? I'm sure you can count them on a single hand in each of those companies. So it's been declining. In even organizations like the American International Club, we feel that over the years. Our membership has been down, even though you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to be a member of our organization. Just the overall amount of Americans have been declining, and it's because of these taxation issues.
Now, a lot of Swiss feel unfairly treated by the U.S. government. It seems that, yes, the US is waging a war on Switzerland and is kind of singled out Switzerland. Do you feel that a different administration could view this issue differently and be a little bit more, say, negotiate a bit more rather than impose?
It's a really good question. And the honest answer is I just don't know. I'm very hopeful that obviously Governor Romney, coming out of the business sector, himself knowing the international financial sector very well, he's had some overseas different accounts himself for tax optimization, which is completely legal in the United States. U.S. citizens can have overseas bank accounts as long as they report them, so everything's fine. So I would think with his experience, maybe he would have a little more empathy for what's going on. And as an overseas American expatriate, I completely understand the Swiss situation because we feel like we're under the same sort of pressure as well. Is it going to change? A lot of these issues are already at governmental level. When I say that, I mean like Department of Justice, Internal Revenue Service, so they start to take on a life of their own. My own personal hope is that we can just get some sort of resolution on this whole issue and move forward. The United States and Switzerland have such a long history. We're such close friends. We're sister republics. We do so much for each other. We have the United Nations in New York, the United Nations in Geneva. Switzerland represents our interests in countries like Iran and Cuba, and we're really, really tight friends at the end of the day. So I think we have to overcome these short-term differences, move on to a solution, and go back to that friendship that really forms the basis of the partnership between the two countries.
So, well, Edward, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Nicolette. It's been a real pleasure to be here.
For all of your technical analysis, news and exclusive interviews, stay tuned to Dukascopy TV.